This is Why Am I a Mets Fan? A podcast hosted by Samantha Croston and Ashley Wenskoski.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Why Am I a Mets Fan podcast. That's Ashley Wenskoski. I'm Samantha Croston, and we are sports reporters in Syracuse, New York, who have a baseball podcast. We talk about the Mets. We also talk about a lot of other teams, and we have a lot of upcoming content for you today. It's awards week. We have the latest on Juan Soto and more. But first, one of our really day one listeners from when we started this podcast back in May, right?
Legitimately day one.
James Buckley said that he had a gift for us. And it finally came in today, and it is outstanding. It's a little grimace, and we still are trying to figure out, and we'll find this out for him, is it 3D printed? Did he make this on his own? Did he buy this somewhere?
James, where did Grimace come from? We have questions. Thank you so much. We're going to make it a part of the studio, and it's always going to be in the background, so James will always be a part of our episodes, and we really appreciate that.
Thought that was really nice how to show it. He actually shipped it all the way from California, which we appreciate. Obviously, a lot of our listeners are from there. So feel free to send us a gift anytime. If a $1,000 check came in the mail, we wouldn't... Kidding, relax.
Are we though?
But thank you so much for joining us. If you're new here, if you've been with us for a while, we appreciate you sticking with us through the off season. Let's start right where the happenings are, which is that it's awards week. Beginning with today, when Paul Skenes wins NL Rookie of the Year. Pretty impressive.
Yes. Awards week, very fun right before next week. Next week, I think the hot stove is really going to heat up. We're going to get into the GM meetings. The Soto stuff is really going to pop. We're going to talk about Soto a little later on. But for this week, it's awards week. Awards week is fun. I like awards week. Maybe I'm just, I don't know, a nerd like that. A baseball nerd. Paul Skenes wins the NL Rookie of the Year over Jackson Merrill of the Padres and Jackson Chourio of the Brewers. Now, here's the thing. I knew Paul Skenes was going to win this award. I actually feel like this goes for a lot of the awards this year and a lot of the finalists. I knew Paul Skenes was going to win this award, but I also feel a little bad for Jackson Merrill. I feel like Jackson Merrill had a case. We'll get into it. I feel like that's kind of par for the course through a lot of these. I feel like who I anticipate to come in as the runner-up kind of had a case. Skenes only the 5th rookie pitcher in MLB history to start an All-Star game back in July. His stats were insane. They were just insanely good. But I had one in here that I wanted to point out, and I don't know where it went. Oh, yeah. No rookie pitcher in the live ball era made more starts, he made 23 starts, or posted a lower ERA with a 1.96 ERA than Skenes did. His 170 strikeouts set a new Pirates franchise rookie record. Among all pitchers with at least 130 innings, he led the National League in ERA. Not even rookie pitchers. Among all pitchers. Paul Skenes, I mean, lights out this year.
He put on a masterclass. I could see where you're coming from, and I'd be interested to hear where your argument lies with Merrill. It's tough, though, with some of these, when you're looking at the numbers and the stats that counts for something. I got to be honest, even in the times where the Mets face him, or I was just watching him, or even in the All-Star game, I was like, wow, this dude has a really bright future. Always knew about him, knew of him together with Livy Dunn. Didn't know how good he was until I saw him this year.
Yeah, I think you have to give credit to where credit is due to Paul Skenes. Also, his rise through the minors was absolutely meteoric. I mean, he was up in, I think, less than a year. It was 11 months he started in the All-Star game. So what Paul Skenes has been able to do in Pittsburgh and will continue to do in Pittsburgh has been nothing short of absolutely astounding. And I deserve he agreed to win the award.
And I think he's a good fit there. Just wanted to say that. Agreed. I like him in Pittsburgh.
We'll see what the Pirates do with him further down the line. But I do feel like Merrill was, I don't want to say snubbed because I am saying that I think Paul Skenes deserved to win. But anytime these awards, these Rookie of the Years, MVP isn't usually like this, come down to pitcher versus everyday hitter, a guy that plays every single day, I have a little debate in my mind, right? Because Paul Skenes is out there for 23 games for the Pirates. He's obviously a huge part of their season. He's on the Pirates, so he's a major attraction in Pittsburgh, gets fans to the games, all that 9 yards. Jackson Merrill topped all NL qualified rookies with a .292 average, .500 slugging percentage, 24 home runs, 90 RBIs. He was clutch. I mean, this pops off the page during a tight playoff race for the Padres. He hit 5 game-tying or go-ahead home runs in the 9th inning or later. That's insane. That's more than any other player in the majors this year and the most by a rookie since 1961. He's also great defensively in center field. Paul Skenes, like, show-stopping, like, lights out as a pitcher, and so I understand why he won. I also just feel like what Jackson Merrill was able to do in San Diego this year was extremely impressive for a rookie, for a guy of his age, and he's out there every day. This was a full season of top-notch production, both at the plate and on the field.
I feel like you could also have, I feel like you sort of see this debate popping up frequently, even just, and I'm just sort of speaking more generally, but I feel like there are certain positions that you're seeing frequently getting the either rookie of the years or the MVPs. Like, I feel like it's always a quarterback or it's always a this or a that. But I don't know. At the same time, I feel like even though Skenes, yes, was solely on the mound, you're right, he wasn't out there every day. But pitching, in my eyes, is one of, if not the hardest positions. The entire game is switched around, good or bad, by the performance that the person puts on. He was a starting pitcher, so he's doing a lot of innings. I think he earned it, but I hear where you're coming from.
I would agree. I think pitching is a craft and it's an art, right? I also just think
craft.
There's something to be said for Jackson Merrill running out there for close to 162 games and having that level of production at his age. I'm impressed by you,
agree.
Jackson Merrill. Sorry you didn't win.
And we understand that. You also have Tuesday Manager of the Year, which we wanted to get into. I think that's an exciting topic to cover. And the finalists include Mendoza from the Mets. Yay. Pat Murphy from the Brewers. And Mike, how do you pronounce this?
Schilt, I believe.
Schilt. Okay. From the Padres. We both essentially at this point believe that it will probably come down to Mendoza or Murphy.
Yeah.
Do you have a stance as far as who you think actually is going to win this?
I mean, here's the thing, all right? Everybody that listens to this podcast knows that I think Carlos Mendoza has a very impressive case. But here's the thing. Mendoza is a first-year manager. Pat Murphy is a first-year full-time manager with the Brewers. The Brewers went 93-69. They really just didn't have these expectations coming into this year at all, which neither did the Mets, but they won the NL Central despite losing a lot of their key pieces, including a guy like Corbin Burns, Kristen Yelich, Devin Williams, et cetera, to injury at various points of the season. So I think what Pat Murphy was able to do in Milwaukee this year was very impressive, especially coming into a year that you didn't necessarily expect that from them. They won the NL Central. They ran away with it. You know what I mean? It wasn't even a discussion. The Mets did not have that type of dominance. The Mets had to fight and claw their way for every single win that they got this year. But there's something to be said for fighting and clawing your way.
Like, isn't that impressive too?
I think so.
In a different way?
I think Mendoza would absolutely have this if he was the only first-year manager. I think the fact that Pat Murphy is also a first-year manager probably pushes him over the edge. I mean, nice guy. Got to talk to him last week. If you didn't see that in last week's episode, go back and listen to it because he actually talks about his thoughts on this Manager of the Year thing. But Mendoza held the Mets together. I think it's arguably harder for a team that isn't that good all year, is actually quite bad through the first couple months of the season. And then to see where the Mets ended up, I mean, that's the thing with these awards, right? They're supposed to only take into consideration the regular season. So the Mets did not win the NL East.
I was just about to talk about that.
And that's the problem.
I was just about to talk about that. I understand that. Like, in a way, I do really get that because it does make the playing field feel a little more level, but like, how unfair is that? Like, this whole time that we're discussing this happened and that happened. Yeah, and then the Mets played the Brewers in the playoffs and they won and it was electric.
And then the Mets were 2 wins away from the World Series.
Right? Like, I get it that I guess you can't account for that, but in a way that does feel like a BS rule.
Right.
Like, it's crazy.
I agree.
It is crazy in the sense that the Brewers, like you said, not even a discussion, non-negotiable. You know, the greatness was there and it was there all along. But like with the Mets, it wasn't, and then they made it further. And I get it that doesn't count, but I'm kind of like, damn, shouldn't it for something?
I think that with all these awards, and I also think in the minds of voters, like, that's, if you're the Baseball Writers Association who votes on these things, like, I mean, I actually don't know when they vote, so I shouldn't say that. Maybe they vote before the postseason. But if they don't, like, you're telling me that the Mets story is not in the back of their minds, and I know we're only supposed to consider the regular season. But even so, even the Mets regular season, forget about getting to the NLCS. Just what they had to accomplish at the end to get there at all. Game 161, Game 162, the stuff with the Braves, the Hurricane. I'm not saying that should make the Hurricane. I'm not saying that just should make Carlos Mendoza Manager of the Year, but I think it's a real testament to him keeping this team together down the stretch, keeping them inspired, even with, I mean, the Mets were missing some pieces, right? You expected Kodai Senga. Kodai Senga was a non-factor this year. That was Carlos Mendoza figuring out how to work a pitching staff that literally lost its quote-unquote ace and then happened to find a new one in Sean Manaea. So we know the Mets bias, we know, but I think he has a case, right? I'd be very shocked if like Murphy ran away with it.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I'm not sure that I could sit here and honestly tell you that I think Mendoza is going to win, but I think the voting might be closer than people originally expected.
I would agree.
It could be close. So we'll see about that. We also have Wednesday, Cy Young, 3 NL finalists, Chris Sale from the Braves, Paul Skenes, and Zach Wheeler from the Phillies.
Interesting note on that, by the way. Did you know that Chris Sale has never won that award? Because that shocked me a little bit. He's been so good for so long. Never won a Cy Young.
I didn't.
And I think he's going to win
just
this
because
one.
of Sean Manaea. He really helped 2 pitchers
Shout
this
out
year.
Sean. Shout out Sean. I think Sale's going to win that award. Moving on.
Thursday, MVP.
Oh, boy.
NL finalists.
Here's where I have thoughts.
Francisco. When do you ever not have thoughts?
No, but here's where I really have thoughts.
Like once a day, Ashley will say to me, well, this is just my last thing on that. It's never been the last thing.
No, there's never an end.
Francisco Lindor from the Mets, Shohei Ohtani from the Dodgers. Oh, this is going to be hot.
Hot topic.
And yeah, that's it, right? That's it?
Yeah, the third NL finalist simply is not winning that award. It's going to be Lindor or Shohei Ohtani.
Who is? Do you know the third one or no? I feel like we should have said it.
Yeah, I did.
We'll look it up at some point. Sorry that we didn't put it down.
Sorry, I'm so Lindor Ohtani focused.
No, that's okay. Look it up, and I'm going to talk about what we have going on in the cases in the meantime.
Sure.
So you got Francisco Lindor, Mets, entered 2024 with 5 top 10 MVP finishes in his career, but he's a first-time finalist after a clutch year anchoring the Mets lineup. He recovered from a slow start. We can talk about some of his numbers, but that's just to set the scene. Then you have Ohtani on the Dodgers. The playing field for the NL MVP race looked a bit more even with Ohtani limited to a DH role this season, but the $700 million man exceeded all expectations in his first season with the Dodgers. He really did. I mean, the hitting was unreal. He posted the first 50-50 season in MLB history. He was a history maker. He stole 59 bases. He won his first World Series. He had a storybook season.
Yeah.
And I am interested to hear your thoughts because this is going to be a tough sell for me if you're trying to tell me Ohtani shouldn't win that.
No, so the third finalist, sorry, that was genuinely bad TV, was Ketel Marte from Arizona. I actually did know that. Forgot. Sorry. Anyways, yeah, between Lindor and Ohtani, I mean, here's the thing, and I know all of our Dodgers fans are going to say this, and I agree with you. You just can't argue with the Ohtani stats at the plate, which is why, to me, he's going to win this award. I think it's more of a question of does he win it unanimously, or does Lindor get a couple votes? I mean, his 54 home runs, 130 RBI. He hit 310. He stole 59 bases. Like, we are going to look back at that in years to come and be like, oh my God, like not even just this season, Ohtani's entire career. And just, I don't know if it'll be able to be replicated ever. It's insane.
We may never see that again.
Regardless of if he never takes the pitcher's mound again, which he will. So that's the thing with Ohtani. I know people are like, well, he didn't pitch this year. Well, yeah, well, did you see what he did at the plate? Like, I don't even care if he ever pitches again ever. The Dodgers also won the World Series, which I'm not going to be a hypocrite. If just said that we think you should take the postseason into account, then you should probably take that into account. You know what I mean? I'm gonna play both sides there. On the other hand, Lindor, I think, to me, when I think of a most valuable player, the thing about the Dodgers, and I might get ripped in the comments for this, could the Dodgers have gotten there without Ohtani? Maybe not. Do I think they could have won the World Series without Shohei Ohtani? I mean, how do you replicate that production? Maybe not. But they still would have been very close, and maybe they could have. The Dodgers were a more well-rounded team. When I think of a most valuable player, the New York Mets were not getting anywhere they got this season without Francisco Lindor. He put that team on his back down the stretch in the second half of the season and in the playoffs, and quite literally willed them to where they got. He was playing through injury. I know Ohtani was at times too, whatnot. This is all culminating me to say that I think Ohtani should win the award. You can't argue with the stats. I'm not advocating for Francisco Lindor. I'm just saying there is an award for best hitter, okay? MVP is just the other thing we have to talk about that I haven't even gotten to yet. Ohtani's a DH, so when he's not pitching, he doesn't play the field. Now, Francisco Lindor, I don't have the stats defensively, but I know just from watching the Mets all season, he saved a whole lot of runs at shortstop. He had some magical plays up the middle, and he was just the Mets' complete team leader and team, in essence, captain, and I know that doesn't go into the discussion, so please. My point is just, I think Lindor had a great case, and any other season where there is not a Shohei Ohtani, he wins it. But Shohei Ohtani plays in the National League now, and he's won it twice. He's probably going to win it a third time. Do I think he should be unanimous? I don't know. Not really. I think Lindor deserves a little bit of love. That's my Mets bias talking. If he is unanimous, it's going to be the third time he's done that. No player's ever done it even twice. I just have a little, this goes along with the Jackson Merrill Paul Skenes thing. Ohtani only has to worry about his at-bats. Francisco Lindor has a whole game to worry about and a whole season defensively as well.
And I do understand that. But it's tough. It's like, as we're talking about it, because right what we were just discussing with the manager of the year thing, I'm just bringing in a different side to this debate. And we were saying, well, the Mets, fought and clawed their way back as a team versus the Brewers who sort of had it in the bag. I appreciate the argument and see the argument that the Mets will their way to success, the same way that Lindor individually will their way to success. But Ohtani was consistently great. And I think you need to reward consistent greatness. Yeah. That's the thing. And maybe that's why Pat Murphy will win it, is because the Brewers were consistently good, like in the regular season. So I don't know. It's going to be a really tough sell for me, truthfully, to think that Lindor would win this award when Shohei Ohtani exists and put up the season that he had. I definitely see the argument that he wasn't fielding. I know that he was able to just focus on his hitting this year, but I am actually not sold that without him they would have made it as far. I know it was a deeper lineup than the Mets for sure. Yeah. I definitely think they would have gotten further, but Shohei Ohtani is their unicorn. It's like their star. Yeah. And I just, the 50-50 club, the making history, I don't know. I think he's going to win it, and it's going to be by a lot.
It's me giving and conceding a little bit, right? Because I'm saying, if I had a vote, I would vote for Shohei Ohtani, and I'm telling you all that right now. You can't argue with those stats. But I think, in my opinion, just purely baseline everything incorporated, Francisco Lindor was the most valuable player to his team this year. I think Lindor was miles away more valuable to the Mets and their run than Ohtani was to the Dodgers. And of course, Ohtani was very important. But that's me also saying that the Dodgers were obviously, as we saw with the results, a deeper and more well-rounded team. And if Ohtani was out for a few games, they could afford that. Whereas if the Mets were without Lindor for a few games down the stretch, it was like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do?
We were honestly clutching our pearls. We were like, the family is broken. So yeah, I mean, no, I hear that from that perspective, but I don't know, man. I do really feel like Ohtani is that valuable to the Dodgers. And I think without him, who is to say what would have happened or how things would have went? Either way, we'll make that our question of the week. Very curious to see what people think about that from all walks. Yeah. And especially like if you are a Dodgers fan, is there any part of you that thinks Francisco Lindor has a chance or will get votes?
Do you think it should be unanimous,
Yeah, do you think it should be unanimous? I think it's a good question.
And we'll find out this week. Also, worthy to point out, we didn't talk about the American League a lot, but the American League MVP race is stacked, locked, and loaded. Aaron Judge, Juan Soto, Bobby Witt Jr. Aaron Judge is probably going to win it, but my God, is that a field?
That's amazing. Yeah. And Soto's involved in it, which leads us to our next topic. Just want to give everyone the latest on the Juan Soto update. I'm so excited for when there's more to talk about with him.
I know.
But for now, Steve Cohen and a group of high-ranking Mets leadership met with Juan Soto on Saturday in Orange County, California, via the New York Post. The group included both David Stearns and Carlos Mendoza. And how about this? Francisco Lindor was also spotted in L.A. earlier in the week. Most valuable recruiter,
That's
MVR.
my captain. That's my captain.
I mean, damn.
Most valuable captain.
Yes, absolutely. MVC. And there were some quotes that stuck out to us. One of them saying, all signs suggest the meeting went extremely well and the Mets remain viewed as one of the favorites for the services of the 26-year-old Soto. The other big thing was that it was on social media, and it was told to people that with the Mets, their presentation was a big production and, quote, very detailed. That's not surprising to either of us. And I feel like last episode, we tried to tell y'all they were going to put on a show.
I'd be interested to know the details. I hope that more surface as we go throughout this week and next.
What
and
is a big production? Yeah, like
and
what is
were
very
there
detailed?
Fireworks? Like, what is a Steve Cohen big production? I said last week, I don't know what being wined and dined by a billionaire entails, but I would like to find out.
Be.
Anyway, Yes, a beat on Lindor. I mean, Lindor going out there, I know there were the paparazzi photos, and that was very verified that he went out there to talk to Soto. I think you can't overstate how important that is, right? If it does come down to the Mets and Yankees, which it certainly looks like it's going to, well, Juan Soto knows what the Yankees have to offer in terms of Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton. He knows those guys. I think deepening that relationship with Lindor and having Lindor be a part of those talks, your franchise guy, I think that's extremely valuable.
And there's also, we didn't really necessarily get into this last week, but when we got off the air, it was a conversation that we were having as far as who has the upper hand in this ongoing battle. I also think that it is worth noting that the Mets have a lot of players who do have Spanish roots, and they have players of color and people who I think, again, we talked about it even with Ohtani and the Dodgers being able to recruit some of the Japanese players. It feels like a similar situation here.
Yeah.
People want to be surrounded by people that they feel comfortable around and have connection to. And I think it was a great idea to use that to their advantage in this case.
Yeah, the Mets have a rich history in that area, for sure. So, a source suggested to the New York Post today that the Mets are, quote, optimistic and even hopeful about their chances. Now, rumors and word about these proceedings, and I don't know if anybody's gotten down to the cold hard cash yet with Juan Soto, have indicated cold hard cash. It could be around maybe $660 million for 15 years. Like, this is going to be a hefty $600 to $700 million, 10 to 15 years type of ordeal.
I'm sick to my stomach.
Yeah, that's a lot of money, as we've touched on. Now, if that were true, right, just take the 660, 15 years, for example, that would put him at about $47 million a year, which is just over Ohtani's previously record-breaking $46 million a year. Now, as we know, much of Ohtani's is deferred. That's another topic because the deferred thing burns me up inside. I really am not for it.
Why? I think it's so cool that he did that.
No. All right. No, I should preface. I think it's great that he did that for the team. If I'm a Dodgers fan, I would say if the Mets do the same with Juan Soto, I'm certainly not going to argue against it. I'm saying this from a small market.
Yeah.
If I'm on the Milwaukee Brewers, for example, this pisses me off because if my team doesn't have the money for it and then you just get to worry about it later, that's annoying. From a big market perspective, go for it. Anyway, here's the thing of what really stuck out to me today. Also, the Blue Jays and the Red Sox are in these conversations, and they seem to be talking to, but I think it's going to come down to the Mets and the Yankees, and that's just my opinion. Well, it's going to come out of the highest bidder, but I also think that will be the Mets and the Yankees. Michael Kay on ESPN Radio New York Afternoon was having a discussion about this.
Old friend Michael Kay?
Old friend Michael Kay. I really dislike Michael Kay's voice. It's like nails on a chalkboard to me when I have to hear Michael Kay debate something.
That's why I said old friend.
Old friend. Yeah, old friend is never a good sign. Said that this afternoon, the Yankees may not go there with the amount of money that Juan Soto wants if it begins to approach that. If we get into a bidding war and we start approaching $700 million, the Yankees might not go there. However, Stevie, good old Uncle Steve Cohen, is reportedly willing to go $50 million over whatever any other team offers. Now, I don't know if that's true. That hasn't been widely reported. Jeff Passan didn't say it. $50 million over. Stevie's like, just write the check yourself.
Blank.
Just blank.
Whatever you would like. That would be a big production. I think it's, obviously I think as a Mets fan, I guess I think it's great. I do think that Juan Soto is the kind of player that you spare no expense on.
Yeah.
Like, if you're willing to give out $650, why not $700 at that point? Like just percentage wise, it doesn't really feel like that big of a jump, all things considered. That being said, I'm also not a billionaire. However, thinking like largely big picture back to what you were saying about the it's not fair component, I really do hear that because I've thought a lot about that. Like, I think it's great that the Mets are in competition for this because they have that much money and they get to...
And we're spoiled a little bit.
And we're spoiled and they get to buy all these great players. But like, is that fair? Should there be some different rules around these kinds of things? Like, honestly, does that shake up the playing field in a way that I don't really like? Because then I feel like... I don't know how to describe it, but sometimes I almost feel like it demeans the accomplishments a little bit. But also, beyond that... Like, money is not going to buy a World Series. And money's not always going to buy success.
And we've seen that on the Mets.
I know. So that's what I'm saying. I think it's important to keep that in mind. They could get Juan Soto and things still couldn't work out. So I do think spare no expense. But I also think Steve Cohen, with all the money in the world, like, you're still going to have to perform and be successful and have team chemistry, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But go get Juan Soto. Why not?
I have two thoughts on this before we move on.
Okay.
I think that to your point, if deferments become more and more common, I'd be surprised if some rules don't come down the line with that, because I think at that point, if it becomes every star that's up every year is just deferments and deferments, like then you're screwing all the small market teams, and
you're messing up baseball.
I think some rules could be put into place there, and we might see that in the future. B, I know it's going to be a bidding war for Juan Soto. I was prepared for that. And I don't think with the amount of money Steve Cohen has, it's really going to honestly affect the Mets in really many other areas. Maybe they, sign a free agent or two less. But I have a hard time, to me, this is my personal opinion, saying that Juan Soto is worth Shohei Ohtani money, because we just, for 10 minutes, talked about how great Shohei Ohtani is, the only 50-50 season in MLB history. He's a pitcher. He's going to come back. He's going to pitch. He's a dual threat. Juan Soto just frankly does not have that resume. Sure, he's great, and he's going to be great for so long. He's going to be great for 15 years. But do I really want to pay Juan Soto $700 million when that's equivalent to what Shohei Ohtani's doing, and he's the greatest star of our generation? Babe Ruth comparable? No, so I really don't.
You're saying from almost like a market standpoint,
yes.
You don't want to overpay.
I don't want to overpay, but that's just what is going to happen, right? The Mets and the Yankees at this point, in my eyes, are going to get into a bidding war, and someone is going to end up paying a little more than they should for Juan Soto.
Yeah, that actually is fascinating. When I'm always looking at it through the eyes of, well, he's a billionaire. What's the big deal? But also, billionaires probably need to be smart with their money. That's probably how they become billionaires.
They didn't get there, by accident.
And I do think that Cohen, no, they certainly did not. I do think Cohen is sort of a spare no expense in this regard.
Yeah.
But I also feel like it has been well documented, not just from him as an individual, but from the Mets as a team, that they're not going to make dumb decisions or pay for just anything.
Right.
They're going to be competitive. They're going to pay for it, but they're also going to do it based on what is actually within reason, what's within the market. And I don't know. I think you're right. You knew it was going to be a little competitive. So yeah, it may be looked at as overpaying a little. But whether or not that actually is a great investment remains to be seen. And it will remain to be seen until we see what he actually is able to do.
I think Steve Cohen's going to do whatever he can, like you said, within reason. But I think Steve Cohen's a smart guy. David Stearns is a smart guy. If Soto and the Yankees drive up the price to a point where it just doesn't make sense, then I probably think Stevie's out. And I want to take one beat on the Yankees, because I feel like we've overlooked it a lot, and I feel like the Yankees honestly still do have a great chance to sign him. I mean, if it's 50-50 right now, I'm flipping a coin. I don't know. According to the Post, the Yankees baseball people are said to be, quote, gung-ho to get this done, and MLB's highest revenue team certainly should have a solid chance following Soto's generally positive season in the Bronx. The MLB owners' meetings begin Tuesday in New York, so the Yankees will presumably be one of the last to meet with Soto. Word was that they met with him today, Monday, if not the last team. However, it isn't known whether that's any sort of advantage. Then the article goes on, and of course, this is a New York newspaper that covers both teams, to say Steve Cohen is viewed as the Mets' biggest edge, as he's shown a willingness to operate in the red and is believed to have done so the past couple seasons in an effort to bring a winner to Queens. Additionally, as we know, they have $150 million coming off the books, which certainly does not hurt.
No, it doesn't. I think the last thing I'll say on the Yankees is you're probably right. We probably should have talked about it more, because if it ends up coming out that he's staying with the Yankees, I don't think either of us would be surprised.
No.
So many people have this mentality and mindset that the biggest thing and the thing it's going to come down to is always the money. And for a long time, I just haven't been able to get behind that, and I still can't. Especially with a guy like Juan Soto, where he said his priorities are winning and wanting to know the ownership. I don't think it's all money. I think he also just wants to be somewhere that he likes and feels comfortable and feels good and feels like he can win and likes the culture. So if any of those things align and the Yankees align with the views and what he's wanting and he enjoyed being there, I wouldn't act like that's a non-factor, because I think it is.
We said this last week, and the clip actually did really well on Twitter, got a lot of interest. I think the Mets, objectively, are a more exciting team right now, have a steeper, positive upward trajectory in just every area of the organization than the Yankees. And I know the Yankees were in the World Series, so please. That's just what I think about the Mets right now, ownership-wise, front office-wise, all of it together. At the same time, I honestly really do think that Juan Soto is going to go to whoever writes him the biggest check between the Mets or the Yankees, because whichever one you want to say, all right, you want to argue with me that the Yankees have a better whole feel right now, well, then the Mets aren't far behind them. If you want to argue the Mets, the Yankees aren't far behind them. Do I think if the Toronto Blue Jays walked along and found $700 million to hand to Juan Soto, that he would go there? I don't know, because to your point, I think he wants biggest check, but I think he wants a very competitive environment and a chance to win one of, if not multiple, World Series throughout this 15 years of this contract. So he's not going to Toronto because Toronto doesn't offer him that at this time. That's just my opinion.
And probably ever.
And probably ever.
But he also loves New York. So it really is. It's like such an interesting battle. Really excited to see what happens.
Yeah.
All right, just a couple other pieces of news, and then we'll wrap it up here. Sean Manaea has rejected the Mets' $21.05 million qualifying offer. He's now a free agent. Any thoughts?
I think the Mets are going to find a way to sign Manaea. I think they want Manaea more than they want Severino, and I would agree with them. And some people have been saying projecting it's going to be around 3 years, $60 million, which is comparable to the qualifying offer. But I think Sean Manaea is 32. I think he wants to be locked up somewhere for a few years.
This is a little sidebar, but I think it's worth mentioning because it sort of goes into the whole Mets have the culture and the Mets culture wired, the Yankees culture tired. Manaea had his wedding this weekend, right? His wedding?
Yep.
Okay. And the Lindors were there and the Alonsos. And the point remains when you see all of these functions is like with the Mets, like it's all in the family.
Do you know what I would give to go to even one function? Like it doesn't have to be Sean Manaea's wedding. Like I just want to party with the Mets this year's 2024 Mets just for one night.
Like, I just want to be invited and just see them all interact outside of the baseball field. Like, what do they talk about? How do they have fun? They feel like they just seem like the kind of people who dance at weddings and have great times.
The content coming out of that is great. Lindor's daughter out there on the dance floor at Sean Manaea's wedding dancing to OMG. Like, please. I mean, it also, right, is worth mentioning, Francisco Lindor is the only one that is currently signed to be a Met beyond this year, right? Pete Alonso, free agent, now Sean Manaea, free agent. But all of these gatherings and these, I know, guys make friends and teams are close, but it bears me to believe that I'm sure Sean Manaea wants to stay, and I'm sure Pete Alonso wants to stay in his own way. We're not talking about that today, because
because it's a story for another day, but we will be talking about it. Okay, last but not least, I'll let you take care of this because you did these notes. Some other low-level signings that we thought were worth mentioning. What sticks out to you?
The Mets signed right-handed pitcher Justin Hageman to a big league contract. Hageman's 28. He spent his entire 6-year career in the minors. He was actually drafted by the Dodgers, in 2018, out of Penn State. He pitched for the Worcester Red Sox last year, which is Boston's AAA affiliate. They make numerous trips to Syracuse a year. I don't remember seeing him. What's interesting to me about this is that the Mets signed him to a big league deal and he's never pitched in the majors before, so that's a little interesting. I mean, adding some pitching depth, he has a sweeper. His most used secondary pitch is his cutter. He has some really impressive secondary stuff, and also he's shown that versatility with the Red Sox to be used in a both starting and relieving role. So if I'm the Mets, that's something that does intrigue me.
I miss baseball.
I know, me
I
too.
want them to play games again.
I miss the Syracuse Mets and like going to those games, and the real Mets, but throws in the low to mid-90s with a sinker, cutter, changeup, and slider. So that is Justin Hageman. And then today they also signed infielder Donovan Walton, an outfielder, Rafael Ortega, to minor league deals with an invite to spring training. Ortega, a guy who actually played in 47 games for the Mets in 2023. This was just all funny. This is like the low level. We're in the nitty gritty right now. Like, do the small stuff. Oh, sure, throw him, $800,000. Like, we're ramping up to the big boys, the big hot stove.
You can feel it.
Steve Cohen's about to get a little poorer.
And he's about to be happy doing it.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for sticking with us. We are really excited to bring you some of these things that we've been talking about and we're aching for the details on. But until then, we're going to continue to bring you episodes. They will continue to be at least once a week, if not more than that, if something big and breaking happens. Just want to let you guys know, as always, we heard your feedback. We started as a Mets podcast. For now, we're not going to be not a Mets podcast as she drinks from the cup to the Mets cup. We're a Mets podcast. Cheers. However, we really heard your feedback and we want to try and bring you guys some more general baseball news and information. So we will be expanding, and please, if you are from other fan bases, stick with us, stick around, because we have things for you coming down the pike as well.
And thank you, James Buckley. We love you, and that's really cool. And we didn't know you were from California. You're in Dodgers country. Hello?
Yeah, I know. Thank you, James Buckley. And please say in the comments, did you make this? Did you buy this? Or what is the story?
It will be a fixture
with this little grimace thing. Thanks so much for joining us as always. We'll see you next week or sooner.